Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll rise to encourage my colleagues to support my amendment to the appropriations for the Department of Interior to prohibit any funds from being used to finalize President Biden's proposed rule, which would list 2 species of mussels in the Rio Grande River as, quote, endangered, and their habitat as, quote, critical. Unfortunately, it appears to me that our president cares more about the Mexican mussel and protecting this critical habitat than protecting the American people against violent Mexican drug cartels, who he has ceded control of our border to. The only critical habitat that is endangered along the Rio Grande, I can say this as a Texan who's been there multiple times, are the people in the communities living alongside the Rio Grande because of the deluge of people, crime, drugs pouring into our communities, not only in Texas, but throughout the country. It is clear and evident to everyone in this country that our president has failed in his first and most important job to provide for the common defense, to enforce the laws of the land, and to secure our sovereign border. 8 million people have crossed our border illegally. Just in this past year, almost 3.5 million, a record. Last month, 270,000, a record. Record drug flow, record migrant deaths, record abuses, humanitarian crimes. Title 8 of the U.S. Code says that no citizen can induce someone to break the law, and they cannot harbor lawbreakers. But that's exactly what's going on. In Title 8 of the Federal Code, they call it aiding and abetting criminals. That's what our federal government, under our Commander-in-Chief and CEO, President Biden, is sanctioning and legitimizing. Thankfully, there's a section in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, that affirms that states have the sovereign right of self-defense. So when there is an invasion or states experience imminent danger such that will not permit delay, they have the sovereign right to protect themselves. Here's the deal. President Biden isn't only abdicating his first and most important responsibility as president and commander-in-chief, he is infringing on states like Texas in their right to defend themselves and their citizens. And this is the case with this Mexican mussel. He's harassing our governor and our state leaders as they desperately try to do what he has failed to do, and that's secure our sovereign border and protect the citizens of Texas. So, Mr. President, if you want to protect mussels in the Rio Grande River, stop illegal crossings, not the buoys and the states who are desperately trying to protect their citizens. I'd like to reclaim the balance of my time.
Without objection?
And I ask unanimous consent to do so.
So ordered. You're recognized.
Look, I just find it rich with irony that the president decides in this administration, after Governor Abbott and our state leaders, again, in a desperate attempt to protect their citizens and our sovereign border as a result of the failure and abdication of border security, which is a national security issue and a responsibility of our federal government, they put out these buoy barriers to prevent people from taking the dangerous trek across the river and to uphold the law of the land. And here comes our president, who I think, and I hate to impugn such bad motives to our president, but I think he's more concerned about appeasing the open border left than he actually is about the Mexican mussel, quite frankly, because he didn't care that there were millions of people crossing the border illegally, trampling this very, quote, critical habitat of the Mexican mussel. Never once was that an issue for the Secretary of Interior or this administration until Texans decided to stand up and fight for the safety of their citizens and to, again, honor and uphold the rule of law and our sovereignty as a state. That, I think, is the indication that maybe this president isn't quite concerned about critical habitat, and it's certainly not the habitat of the law-abiding citizens in Texas.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas.